Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook. I'm here to review the latest episode of Harley Quinn Season 3. It was called Batman Begins Forever, which is interesting because it's a play on both Batman Forever and Batman Begins. And it works for the title of this episode because of what happens in the episode. Anyway, as it starts out, Harley and Ivy are interrogating Bruce, but it's not going well. In the next scene, we learn that apparently Dr. Psycho is going to be part of this season, which I didn't think was going to happen. As we see him doing a podcast from inside Arkham, where Harley and Ivy find him because they need to get him to go with them to go into Bruce's mind so they can try to find Frank, which he says he'll do if Harley agrees to guest on his podcast, which she does, at which point he takes them all into Bruce's mind, including Clayface, which is also great because Clayface has been absent from the last few episodes. Anyway, once they're in Bruce's mind, they see his memory of what happened the night that his parents died, which thrills Clayface to no end because it gives him an opportunity to actually study Thomas Wayne. Finding that the Bruce they're able to talk to in the memory of his parents' death doesn't help them figure out where Frank is, they proceed to his most recent memory, which turns out to be exactly the same memory, indicating that that's the only memory that Bruce ever has, that he suppressed all his other memories. So no matter where they go in his mind, which is a recreation of Gotham, every few steps they come upon the same memory repeating. And when this happens, Clayface keeps trying to talk to Thomas Wayne to learn about him by going from replay to replay of the memory to try to talk to him, only to have Thomas continually get killed over and over. When Harley tries to change what happens in the memory so that they can talk to Bruce by attacking the guy who shoots the Wayne, she has no success whatsoever. So all she can do is shield Bruce from witnessing it. Clayface does end up confronting a version of Mr. Wayne in the memory to try to get him to tell him what his motivation in life was with his dying breath. And he asks him, what's his rosebud? Only to almost hear that Mr. Wayne's rosebud is also a sleigh. And that's a Citizen Kane reference. And that's kind of a long story, but people say it's one of the greatest films ever made. And I didn't think anything of it really, but it revolves around a character who, with his dying breath, sort of laments that he couldn't recapture the moments in his life where he was with his sleigh rosebud. I never got it, but anyway, that's what that's a reference to. Anyway, this kicks the others out of Bruce's mind, leaving Harley in there with Bruce, whom she runs around with as the killer of the Waynes chases them down alongside copies of himself from the other replays of the same memory. And because Bruce then begins to rely on Harley for his safety and needs her to stay in his mind, Harley can't wake up. While they're running from the killer guy, they fall through a manhole into the Batcave, and Harley says she'll help Bruce get home if he agrees to help her figure out where Frank is. And while they're perusing Bruce's memories in an attempt to do just that, they stumble upon a memory that clues Harley into the fact that Bruce is Batman, which Bruce then acknowledges by saying, "I'm Batman," over which the music from the animated series plays. It was actually very cool. They continue perusing his memories, and one of the memories they see is an animated version of the scene from the 1966 Batman movie, where Batman is running around on the docks down at the wharf trying to get rid of a bomb. They then come upon another memory, which they escape into from the killer, where they would appear to be in a scene from Batman the Animated Series, in which Robin, who is now Harley in the Robin costume, which leads to a funny moment, is tied to a rocket at the hands of what I guess is supposed to be the Mark Hamill Joker, but as voiced by Alan Tudyk, sort of imitating the Mark Hamill voice. And it also includes Harley in her original animated series outfit, helping the Joker in this memory, while using a version of the original Harley Quinn voice as imitated by Kaylee Cuoco, which again was kind of cool because she's doing that Mr. J voice, which isn't her version of Harley Quinn, but she's imitating the original version. It was kind of cool, actually. She actually goofs on the accent. It was very funny. Batman, of course, shows up and rescues Harley Robin, at which point the killer shows up, killing Batman, Joker, and Memory Harley before coming for Bruce, only to have Harley save him by getting his permission to become his licensed therapist and making him think of a safe place, which opens up a portal to Wayne Manor through which they escape. And apparently she says do I have your permission to become your licensed therapist so she won't sue him later? Anyway, it turns out that Bruce kidnapped Frank and altered him so that he could bring back his parents using Frank's ability to bring things back to life, which previously he was only able to do with plants. It also turns out that Bruce is himself the killer chasing Bruce in the memory, and that he blames himself for what happened to his parents because he'd made them take him to the movies that night and to walk home through Crime Alley. Harley tells him that he needs to deal with his trauma rather than try to resurrect his parents before being booted from Bruce's memory after promising to keep his secret under the auspices of doctor-patient privilege, which I thought was very cool. When she comes to, she realizes that she, Ivy, and Clayface are being held captive at Wave Manor, at which point Bruce wakes up and proceeds to try to resurrect his parents with Frank's resurrection ability, despite Harley's renewed protestation that he not do it. And we see him actually start that process, and it seems to go a little cattywampus before the end credits roll. So we're gonna have to see what happens with that next week. Now, I thought this was a good episode. I thought it was the best episode out of the last few because of the cool sort of Easter egg stuff that they did. And because Clayface was back, I think Clayface is great. He's been underused this season. I loved seeing him in this episode. He was doing classic Clayface stuff, which was hilarious. They brought back Dr. Psycho, which I had said in a previous review was something that was missing from this season. So hopefully this wasn't just a one-off. Hopefully he'll be back. I thought the best part of the episode was the interactions between Bruce as a child and Harley, where you really see her therapist side come out, where she really, connects with Bruce, and not just because she's trying to help Ivy find Frank, but because she genuinely seems to care about his situation, having been orphaned so young and having had to witness it and all that. And I particularly, as I said earlier, like the moment where she says, "Don't worry, I'm not going to tell your secret. It's doctor-patient confidentiality." I just thought that was super cool. And, I like to think it's something that the more traditional versions of Harley Quinn would actually do, like in the original animated series and in the movies. Because I think, I'm a believer that everybody's good at heart, that almost everybody is good at heart. And that even people who do heinous things can have a good side that will come out from time to time. And so I like that kind of stuff a lot. And so I really liked it in this episode. And it just endeared this version of Harley to me even more because, I don't prefer this version to the traditional version, but I do like this version. And this made me like this version even more than I have liked it up to this point. So it was very cool. I'm getting a little tired of the thing with Frank being drawn out. Like, I don't know. I don't get why Ivy's so hung up on that. I guess she really likes Frank. I don't know, but that's getting a little bit drawn out, I think. But I am interested to see how Bruce's parents come back. That's going to be pretty wild. And it's the second show of this week's shows that I cover where there's kind of a pet cemetery thing probably going on. So it's going to be interesting. I'm going to get out of here for now. I will, of course, be back with a review of that episode once it is released. Until then, my friends, I wish you peace and long life.